Hi everyone, welcome back to Grounded Haven. My name is Michelle and today's video is going to be all about chickens. So if you have chickens or you would like to one day have chickens, or if you just like seeing photos and videos of them, then this is going to be the video for you. So today I'm going to go over kind of like our whole experience all throughout the year of 2022 having chickens. We're going to go over things like the type of breeds that we have, how many eggs we got throughout the year, the cost of feeding them and maintaining them, and lots of other information like that, so it's probably going to be a long one. Settle in and let's get started. So let's start with the one thing that I think probably a lot of people would be interested in, and that is how many eggs did we get? So just some background information, 2022 was the first full year that we have had chickens. We got some baby chicks in 2021 in May. So throughout that year, they were kind of just like growing up and they weren't fully grown yet. But this past year was the first year that they were all grown up and we had adult chickens. So they were pretty much laying for the entire year. So with just one exception, which I'll talk about later, all of our hens were laying all throughout the year, and we had 9 hens total and also 1 rooster, so 10 chickens total. And the total number of eggs that we got throughout 2022, I was kind of just like astounded by the number. The total was 1,946, which is crazy. We had almost 2,000 eggs last year. And if you break it down by how many dozens of eggs that is, since that's how you would normally buy it at the store, that is 162 dozen eggs. And that means the average for each month was 13.5 dozen eggs. So I think that's pretty incredible. I cannot even believe that our average was that high. Egg laying is definitely a seasonal thing for chickens, and we definitely had a lot more eggs throughout the spring when they were in peak production. And these last few months in the winter, they have not been laying as much. So it's really nice to have an average of the total year so that we can see throughout the year how their laying production changes. And if you're wondering how I got that exact number, the truth is that I am a crazy person and I decided at the beginning of the year to keep track of every single day how many eggs we had. So every evening when we collected the eggs, I would mark down how many eggs we got, and I even broke it down in terms of like how many of each color egg we had, because that way we can have an idea of which breeds lay better. So yeah, for 365 days, I tracked our chickens' egg production. And just as proof of that, let me show you in my notebook what it would look like. So I wrote down every single day how many eggs we had. I also took some notes throughout the months of like things that were happening, so how many bags of food we went through, and if there were any special events or things that we had to do for the chickens. So yeah, I'm pretty proud of myself for taking diligent notes this year, because now we have some good information and data to work off of. So since egg laying is a seasonal thing and chickens lay a lot more in the spring when it's starting to warm up and the days are getting longer, and then as the days get colder and the days are getting shorter in the winter, they will slow down laying or even stop completely. Our chickens also went through their first molting this fall, which is when they kind of like shed all of their old feathers and they grow in new ones. This happens in the late fall so that they have fresh new down feathers to keep them warm in the winter. So during that whole process, since it's very taxing on the chickens, they also stopped producing, so this affected our egg production a little bit. And really quickly, I want to go over how many eggs we got every single month. So in January, we got 179 eggs. In February, we had 181. In March, we had 243, and that was our biggest egg production month of the entire year. April and March were pretty close behind. They had 230 and 237 eggs respectively. Then June, July, August, we had 191, 205, and 210. And then starting in September, we really start to see the egg production taper off. So that month was still pretty decent. We had 140, but then October, November, and December, some months we barely got any, depending on if they were molting and as the days got shorter. So in October, we had 48 eggs. November, it went back up a little bit to 71. And then in December, we only had 11 eggs. So hopefully that gives you a good idea of like what it was like throughout the year. So in the spring, we eat lots and lots of eggs, and we only have 2 people in our house, and we pretty much eat, I would say like 95% of the eggs that we get, which is really a lot of eggs for some people. I think we probably only gave away like 10 dozen eggs, if that, throughout the year. So most of the eggs that come in, we try to consume them ourselves. But yeah, that is the complete overview of the number of eggs that we got. So now let's go over the cost of feeding the chickens and maintaining them, because then we can get to the breakdown of how much each dozen eggs costed to produce. I tried to do my best to keep track of like how many bags of food we went through throughout the year, but I definitely was not as exact with that as I was with the egg counting. It got a little complicated because we did have baby chicks in the middle of the year, so we had to switch to chick food for a little bit. But to my best estimation, I would say that for 10 chickens, we go through 2 bags of 50-pound food every month. And right now their food costs $20.50, which is pretty high right now. And to be honest, I don't really remember how much it used to cost like in the beginning of the year. I feel like it was about like $18. It might be more expensive now, but I'm gonna base it off the number as it is currently, and that way it will just be like an overestimation of their cost of food, just so that we can be safe that I am not like underestimating things. So for 2 bags of food a month at $20.50, for a year's worth of food costs, it is $492. A couple other materials that we buy throughout the year are their bedding, and we usually just get a bale of like pine flakes, and we don't go through very many of those. I think we only go through like 3 a year, and those cost $7.39 each, so that is a total of $22. So not too bad for bedding. And then other things that I included in this are treats, supplements, and medicine, and I estimated this to be about $50. So this category includes things like black oil sunflower seeds that we give them for treats, also oyster shells, which we give as a supplement since our hens lay a lot of eggs and they need that extra calcium in the spring. And also medicine. We really don't buy much medicine because nothing has happened really, thankfully for us. But we did buy 1 bottle of like first aid medication for one of our chicks that had an injury on them. So I just added in like $20 for that. So that can definitely change depending on the situation. But for those costs, the total was $564 for the entire year. All the things that I'm including in this like expenses breakdown do not include all of the upfront big costs of owning chickens. Things like building your coop, your fencing, and your run, those definitely can cost a lot of money. But since we didn't have to do that this year and we spent all of that last year when we were first getting our chicks, I didn't include it in this because I kind of just want an expense breakdown of how much it costs to maintain our chickens from here on out, year to year. So with those numbers, the total amount that each dozen eggs costs us to produce is just under $3.50. Which might sound like a lot depending on what kind of eggs you normally buy from the grocery store. If you're buying like the cheapest eggs that are raised in a factory, you probably might be a little disappointed to know that you will not be saving money by raising your own chickens. At least not the way we do it. I mean, you could always like feed them lower quality food, but we don't really want to do that. On the other hand, if you're used to buying organic free range eggs, then you will definitely be saving a lot of money. Back when we used to buy eggs, I think we would pay like $6 or even $7 for organic free-range eggs. Sometimes we would get them at a farm for $5 a dozen. So if you're coming from that kind of situation, which I think is a fair way to look at it, since we do raise our chickens very naturally and they are very happy chickens, I think that it's fair to say that we are saving money because the quality of eggs that they produce are definitely a higher quality egg. I should also mention that in addition to the food that we pay for, we do supplement their feed by giving them a lot of stuff from the garden, anything from leafy greens, the tops of radishes and turnips, and also any tomatoes that have gotten a little soft or spoiled, as well as any food waste that comes out of the kitchen. Like if we have a stale end of bread or scraps from processing vegetables, all of that goes to the chickens, and that helps them to have a very varied, healthy diet, and it also helps to keep the food cost down a little bit more. So if you don't have a garden at all, then maybe your food costs will be a little bit higher, but since we do have a garden and we provide a lot of extras for our chickens, that helps for us to keep our food costs just a little bit lower. Of course, not everything is broken down into just money. There are a lot of other benefits that we get from our chickens that make them well worth the cost and the effort of raising them. So I want to go over a few of those today, because if you think that $3.50 for a dozen eggs is not worth it, then there are definitely other things to take into consideration. The first thing that the chickens also provide is really good high quality fertilizer for our garden in the form of their poop. So twice a year we will clean out their coop, and their bedding is made up of the pine flakes and also the chicken poop, and that combination makes for a really good fertilizer once you break it down and age it for a few months. So that all goes into our compost pile, and when it's broken down we apply it to our garden beds. And I've noticed that since we've had chickens, I do feel like our garden has been doing a lot better. So I think that their manure really helps to grow a better garden, and that in turn helps us to grow better food, which we bring into the house and reduces our grocery costs. So that's kind of hard to quantify since I don't really know how to attribute like how much of our garden success comes from the chicken manure, but that definitely is a benefit that I really appreciate. We go through a lot of compost in our garden since it is the main way that we feed our soil. So anything that helps us to offset that cost is really great. And this also means that we have to make fewer trips out to the store to get compost and lug those heavy bags all the way home. We can just do that entire process on our own property, which is really nice. The other benefit that I've kind of touched upon is that we have less food waste in the house, because most of the things that we don't consume go straight to the chickens, and they're able to eat a lot of the scraps that we don't eat. And it feels really nice to know that we are not wasting food. So like I've mentioned, if we have any like bread scraps or vegetable scraps, that goes to the chickens. We also feed their own eggshells back to them. And I'll also give them, like if I've cooked any meat for broth, after I've picked off all of the meat, I will throw the bones to the chickens, and they are really able to get into like all the nooks and crannies and pick those bones completely clean. Better than I can. With their little beaks, they can really get in there. So all of those types of food products go to the chickens, and it helps us feel good about wasting less in the kitchen. They also help a lot with a lot of garden and yard waste. Whenever I'm pruning things in the garden or pulling weeds, a lot of that also goes to the chickens because they enjoy a lot of weeds that I pull out, things like dandelions, chickweed. Most of that goes to the chickens, and they can help me get rid of that yard waste because I don't always want that to go into our compost pile in case there are seeds. So they definitely help with that as well. On that note, they also help with pest and weed control because again, I will throw weeds to the chickens, and if there are any seeds in them, they can help to kind of pick those out and prevent those weeds from spreading. I will also a lot of times throw them bug infested plants or vegetables. For example, if I have like cabbage or kale that has a lot of aphids on them, I can just throw them the entire plant, and they will not only eat the vegetables, but they'll eat all of the bugs that are on there, and that will help prevent the pests from multiplying in the future. Another way they help us to save money is that because we are constantly getting fresh eggs in, this really helps us to prevent the number of times we go to the grocery store. Before we had chickens, I think eggs were like the number one thing that we always ran out of that we had to go to the grocery store for. And once we're in the grocery store, we tend to spend money on other things because you're already there, you might as well. But if we never run out of the one thing that makes us go to the grocery store, then that helps us to save money on other things. And the last benefit that we can't really quantify is just the joy and entertainment that we have from raising chickens. And I know that anybody who has chickens will understand this, but raising chickens is just so much fun. They provide so much entertainment, and we just love watching them. There are a lot of nights where we'll just let them out to free range, and we could probably just sit there watching them for hours and hours. It's just really fun to see them like digging around, chasing each other if one of them has found something really fun to eat. They have found some really crazy things in our yard, things like skinks, snakes. We even saw one of them find a little turtle the other day. So they are just really great at just finding all of these little critters, and it's really fun to watch them run around. And they also give us an excuse to just get up like in the middle of the day and take a little walk to visit them. So I feel like they are just really great for our own joy and mental health. And that's something that we definitely can't forget about when we think about whether or not they are worth keeping, because I think for that alone, they definitely are. So now let's talk about the different breeds that we have. We have 3 different breeds. The first one is called Red Star, and these are kind of like our reddish brown chickens. We have 3 of those that are all hens, and these definitely are like a production hen. They lay so many eggs. I think in the spring, one of these chickens out of like an entire month will maybe miss 1 day of laying. So out of 30 days, these hens will usually lay 29 of those days. So I think that is pretty crazy. They also lay the biggest eggs out of all of our chickens. They lay like a really pretty medium brown egg. So if you're going off of production alone, I would definitely recommend that breed of chicken. Next we have Barred Rock chickens, and this is a heritage breed, I believe, and these are like the black and white kind of stripy looking chickens that we have. We had 2 of those hens throughout the year. We now have another chicken that is like a half Barred Rock, but I'm only counting the 2 that were adults throughout last year. So we had 2 of those, and they lay kind of like a cream colored egg. I've noticed that for these chickens, their eggs are a lot smaller than the eggs that we get from the other breeds. I'm not really sure why, because Barred Rocks are supposed to lay large eggs, but the ones that we have definitely lay a smaller size egg. And third, we have Americanas, and for most of last year we had 4 of those. And Americanas can vary greatly in terms of like their coloring. So we had a couple that are kind of like more gray and like muted colors, and 2 of them were kind of brown with like golden colors to them. Another really fun thing about Americanas is that some of them have beards, and I think all of our Americanas have beards, and I think it's so cute. I did not know that this was a thing that chickens could have, and I just think it is incredible. They lay really beautiful blue eggs that are quite large as well. And for the Americanas, I would say that probably out of 7 days, each hen will lay like 3 or 4 eggs. So they're definitely not a chicken to get if you are only interested in egg production, but I would highly recommend them. I think they are so fun. So yeah, those are the 3 different breeds that we have, and we enjoy all of them, but I would say that our favorite breed has to be the Americana. And this is kind of surprising because they're actually probably like the weakest layer out of all 3 breeds. They're not a bad layer by any means, but compared to the Red Stars, which are incredible layers, and the Barred Rocks are pretty decent layers, the Americanas definitely fall on the lower end of the spectrum. But we simply love them because they are beautiful and they are so fun to have, and we really love their personalities. I don't know if it's right to say, I don't know if it's like you're not supposed to have a favorite children, but we definitely have favorite chickens, and pretty much all of our favorites are all of our Americanas. They have very distinct personalities. I mean, all of our chickens do, but there's something about the Americanas, and I don't know if it's just the ones that we have, but we absolutely love them. And for that alone, they are our favorites. So if you're looking for a breed of chicken that is a really good layer, I would recommend the Red Stars. If you're looking for just a really fun chicken that lays beautiful blue eggs, I would recommend the Americanas. The one thing I will say though is that the Red Stars, we have had some behavioral issues with them. One of our Americanas went broody this year, and she had to be separated with the chicks for a little bit, and when we were trying to reintroduce her and the chicks to the flock, she had a really hard time because the Red Stars really were being very aggressive towards her and also towards the chicks. So if you're going to be doing a mixed flock, or if you're anticipating raising any chicks, I would be wary of that. I have heard that some other people have had trouble with their Red Stars being aggressive. I think because of that whole incident, I think that Aaron and I maybe have decided not to get Red Stars in the future. Even though they are such an incredible layer, the stress of having your chickens attack other chickens and then having to separate them definitely is not worth it for us. And this also led to some other expenses that we had to take on throughout the year, because Aaron had to build a separate coop just for our Red Stars so that we could separate them from the flock for about a month before reintroducing them, and that did help to fix the aggression problems. So that's definitely something to keep in mind. I'm not saying that it will happen to everyone, but I wish that we had known that beforehand, because it definitely was a very stressful period of chicken owning this year, and that extra coop did cost us like another couple $100, which I didn't include in our expenses since it's not something that is like a usual maintenance thing. It's just because of a special circumstance that arose, but I did want to mention that. So I just mentioned that one of our hens did go broody this year, and I wanted to bring that up because this does tie into egg production and cost as well, because when a hen goes broody, she will stop laying and she takes that time to raise the chicks. So the hen that went broody for us was an Americana, and because she went broody, this meant that basically for like 6 or 7 months of the year, she was not laying. So all of the numbers that I have for egg production are including that one hen that went broody, and this definitely brings our egg average down a little bit. But if you have breeds that don't go broody, or if you try to break the broodiness out of your hen, then you will definitely get more eggs. Having one of our hens go broody and hatching out a handful of eggs and raising up those chicks, that was another chicken keeping experience that was new for us and one that was so special and magical to watch. We knew that this would affect our egg production, but we didn't mind because this meant that we could just experience the entire natural process since this was a first for us and we were really curious in just experiencing it firsthand. And this also meant that if everything went well and we decided to continue this process in future years, we wouldn't have to purchase more chicks. We could just hatch out our own chicks to multiply our flock. Or as our chickens get older, if we have a few new baby chicks every year, then that would sustain our current numbers. In the end, one of our chicks did die very early on, which was very heartbreaking, and we did end up having 3 roosters out of the 4 remaining chicks. So 2 of them went to the freezer, and one of them took the place of our old rooster. And he's the rooster that we currently have. We also have 1 hen, and she's still growing up right now. She has not started laying yet, but she probably will soon. So throughout this whole process, we ended up with 2 new chickens, but also we just had that firsthand experience that was so special. So I think that's everything I wanted to cover for this video. I'm hoping that it's helpful for anyone who's thinking of getting chickens and wants to get a better idea of like the cost and how many eggs you get and a little introduction to some of the breeds. If you have some chickens yourself and you have some favorite breeds or some other information you would like to share, please let me know in the comments down below. It's been a really great learning year for us having chickens, and it's nice to be able to share some of that information with you all. So I hope you enjoyed this video. Thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you again in the next one.